Hello and welcome to the Stories That Shape Us podcast. My name is Joanna Daniel. In this episode of the podcast, I really important guest. I say that about all of my guests because all are important. But when I read this latest book, it was so mind-blowing to me. There are parts of it that I thought it was a movie, and it should probably be one, and maybe soon. But I want to introduce you today to my guest and author and mom, Lela Burbridge. Welcome to the podcast, Lela.
Thank you, John, for having me. It's really an honor to join you today, and I hope that we have a good time together.
Yeah, I'm sure we will. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with our audience by way of introduction? Tell them about who you are.
Yeah, so my name is Lela Burbridge. I am an author, like you said. I'm a writer, I'm a mentor, a teacher. I'm a mom of 3 babies,
Mm.
and I am a wife. I'm a Jesus freak lover. I just love God.
Jesus freak lover.
Yeah, I am, and yeah, that's who I am, I think.
And I suppose we'll get to know more as the conversation continues.
Yeah.
Tell me, Layla, about. I really saw that when I was reading Ashes of My Childhood. I'm going to show you Layla's book, Ashes of My Childhood. Um, Beautiful, but you should read. Tell me about your faith when you came to Christ, and how did you get to build such a strong faith that has sustained you?
Um, I think a lot of people have got stories of my auntie, my grandma, my friends, but
Mm.
actually, me, unusually, it was biscuits that really introduced me to my faith.
Biscuits.
Yes. And I tell people that I love food. That's why I love food. I would never ever go and evangelize or preach to anybody without food, because I think when the Bible says action, words without action is, dead. I
Yeah.
believe. So when I was 8 years old, I went to this. Or there was this crusade thing that came in the slum where I was living, and one of the things they were doing, and I thought it was so clever, is every child under the age of 10 was
Mm.
given a biscuit, and I was always the first one for those 5 days. I'm telling you.
Mhm.
But on the last day, actually, the gentleman who was leading this crusade, Christian crusade, he said, let the little children come to me, that Bible verse. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is me. I need to be taken away from my stepfather and from my mother. So I
Mm.
went up to him and I said, you call the little children? I am little. I'm only 8. you know? And he just looked at me and I was like, yeah, you can take me away and nobody will miss me even. I'm like, Jesus, yeah, I'm the one you want. I've got friends, I
Mm.
could get them as well. And this
Mhm.
man looked at me for a few seconds. And I think if we talk about child protection, he was very good, because he just went and got a female
Mm.
usher
Mm.
and
Mm.
said, talk to this auntie and she will be able to tell you more about Jesus. And I was a little bit disappointed because I thought, just take me, I don't need to talk to anybody.
Mm.
I
Mm.
think that's how they talked to me about Jesus, and they talked about heaven, and I really wanted to go. I was quite ready.
Mhm.
And yeah, so that's how for me I started exploring the journey. I didn't become a Christian, I just explored the journey. And they said that every Sunday a bus will be coming to the place where the crusade was, taking people to church. So my stepfather then was Muslim. He was a very nice man. I'm not saying all Muslim people are. I've got Muslim
Mm.
friends who are wonderful, but this
Mm.
particular man was very kind.
Mhm. He
So
was.
I used to climb out of the window and run, go to the bus. And again at church, something they did really clever, they gave us food. So I loved every Sunday. I was the first one there. Get the bus, off we go. And then through that, slowly I started, knowing a little bit about God and the love of God. And then I remember one day there was a big baptism at church, and I went because they said it's going to be lots of food. So I thought, well, I'm coming. I got on the bus, went to this baptism, and I didn't get home until we got back home about, gosh, close to midnight. I remember going back home and my stepfather was standing there with a belt. And I thought, I could say that I got lost. I could say that I thought of a million things to say.
Mm-hmm.
I remembered in Sunday school they'd say that Jesus' children don't lie. So I said, I've been at church. I went to the baptism, and I remember I'd kept a bit of chicken in my clothes for my mom, because we didn't have much food at home. And I remember my stepfather saying, turn back and go back to church.
Mm.
And I could have gone to my friend's house or wherever, but I just thought, Jesus' children don't lie. I went back to church. And thank goodness that when I went there, the ushers and the people who have come to know me were still there putting away things. And I remember this gentleman being really shocked, say, what are you doing here? You should be home. And I said, my mom said I should come back. And they sat me down and asked, your real mom? I said, yes. And so they took me back home, and then they made a negotiation with my parents. Said, well, if she comes to church on Sunday, we'll give her food. Because my stepfather said, you can't make decisions in my house if you don't feed people here. And Jesus made a trade for me, I call it.
Yes, he did.
She comes to church, we'll give her food. So every Sunday I went, my mother sent me happily, and they gave me a bag of posho, beans, and they used to have like powdered milk.
Mm-hmm.
I took that home, and that's how my journey of Christ really started.
Mm-hmm.
I've never really looked back.
Mm-hmm. I
Yeah.
think Jesus made a trade for you. I love that. I love that because it's so easy to put it in other frames, but I think putting it in that frame is just so special. He made a trade for you, and he surely did. When I read the book, there are many times when you've experienced the adversity didn't stop there. How did you hold on to your faith amid the adversities that you went through?
Joanna, I think sometimes there is no other hope.
Option. Mm.
There's no option, there's no hope. And for me, as you see, you journey through my story,
Mm.
there was no other way. Every time something happened, I had no option but to turn to God, and not to turn to Him and pray, because most of the times I did not pray, but be angry.
Mm-hmm.
I was
Be
Lord.
angry.
Yes, I was quite an angry little girl. I would shout at Jesus and say, but you said you love the little children. You said you did. And I said that all the way, even to now, I do that.
Mm.
So I think when you have no other option and you've come to know of this superpower that you can talk to, because
Mm.
growing up, I grew up in a culture where you can't talk back.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of talking back, I would go to the fields, or I would, go somewhere and hide myself and talk to Jesus in the way I would have talked to my auntie, in the way I would have talked to somebody who's hurting me. I would
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people will say, oh, she needs help, she's mad. I wasn't mad. It's the only way I could express myself.
That's so special. You were angry and you talked to him and tell him about why you were angry. Reminds me of
I tell
reminds
my
me of
that as well. So
yeah. Reminds me of David, I was going to say, how he vented to
mm.
God. So that's very special.
And God loves that, because I think sometimes we miss it. We either over familiarize ourselves with God and think we can be whatever, or we can just put him on a pedestal that he doesn't want to be. He wants to be daddy. He wants to be a
Absolutely.
parent. He wants to be a friend. He wants, if we are happy, we go and talk and say,
Yes.
just like, and I think that's the thing. I'm very grateful that I learned that through my adversities, through my suffering.
Mm-hmm.
I learned that. That's because most of the times I was silenced by those bigger than me, and I couldn't,
Mm.
I just had to vent somewhere else.
You just went somewhere else. Isn't it? It's interesting, Layla, because sometimes when we have our adversity includes harm done by people in authority, caregivers, as in your case. Sometimes we have problems with authority, and we don't really. It's especially in the work that I do. I meet people who don't have a relationship with God because of that, and here you are saying, because of that, I learned how to just talk to him because I couldn't talk to the adults around me. That's so interesting.
Yeah, and I think because I think we forget that, and this is somebody told me this in my teenage years. My auntie aunt said to me that, our hurting people do hurt others because they don't know where to put it, and
Sure.
we give what we know. So I understand that, when people don't like people in authority, or people who resemble something that is
Mm,
hurt them. I
hmm
had that, and until in my mid 20s, I
hmm
absolutely despised men simply
mm,
because of what they did to me. My male figures in my life that time really struggled with me. I never hugged them. I was talking back simply because I was trying to fight the abuser that inflicted that to me. But
Yeah.
then I realized that there are so many things I wanted in life that men
Mm,
had. Like, I wanted to be a wife, I wanted to be a mother one day, and I realized that I cannot have that relationship, that closeness, if I felt what I felt. I
hmm
was able to understand actually at a very young age, and I thank God for this. I was able to understand that my abuser is living a life,
mm,
and I'm stuck in this cycle of being bitter and
hmm
angry.
hmm
And I remember I had to deal with that. It wasn't an overnight thing. I was very bitter and cried a lot of times because I didn't want to forgive. I did say to God, I don't want to do it.
I
I
did
want,
that too.
yeah,
I did that too.
I want to feel like this. They did this to me, and then I think
Mhm.
I remember actually the Holy Spirit gently saying to me, "But who's suffering?"
Yeah.
And I found that really offensive. I'm like, well, you know, but until I actually worked on that and realized that I want to be happy, and to be happy, I am going to do what I want to do. So I went
Yes.
opposite way, radical. Uh,
Radical.
yeah. And I think that's how I. It doesn't take away what happened. It really does not take away. And every time I think about those incidents, it's like yesterday.
hmm
An opportunity to be in control of what I want my future to look like. Because it's very
hmm
stuck in the past and the now.
Yeah.
Forget the sun that is shining on us in the darkness. I find. So I'm
I
grateful.
I love that, Layla. I so love that because, and that's what that's my favorite theme in your book, your
Mm.
faith. I saw it even in the young girl because you said when God asked me to forgive, I said no as well, absolutely not. And
Mm.
he was so gentle. He was so
Mm.
gentle with me. He never forced me, and
Mm.
that's what you said. His gentleness. What I like about your story and the honesty in which you tell it, it's not a neat faith. It doesn't, it's not neatly packaged like, I met God and everything was fine and I have a forgiven and I'm fine. I didn't get that. I felt it reminds me of a quote by Brene Brown that
Mm.
says, I thought faith would say, I will take away the pain, but instead it says, I will sit with you in it.
Wow, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's so funny because recently, 2 years ago, my older daughter, she's 8, and she had cancer. And I remember my neighbor saying to me, I read your story. You would think that, your religious thing, it will help you. And she asked me a question that really made me think about how I see my God or my faith. She said, so where was your God when all this is happening? Now your daughter is in hospital.
Mm,
And I thought about it for a second. I say to her, I would love to think that he's holding my hand right now and saying, whatever happens, I am here. And I promise you, she looked at me like I was a lunatic and walked away. It made me really happy because I'm like, God. you were sitting with me when this man was raping me. You were sitting with me when my stepfather was not kind to me. And it just made me really joyous inside. I just felt this sort of sense of
Peace.
accomplishment. And I think sometimes we
Yeah.
need those hard questions to really
Yeah.
like think about where we've come from.
Yes. Where was your God? And you said
Yeah,
he was there. He was right there.
it was there. And I think, because I think of Christ, and if Christ did not die, then the story will be different.
It
So why
would, for
why can't
sure.
somebody else to have a better future?
Mm.
There we are. It's very hard, but it's quite simple. But you have to
Yeah.
have that place to make it that simple. And I understand and I appreciate that not everybody is at that stage.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Yeah.
But hope, there is hope.
There is hope.
Mm.
Again, just love it. Where was God? He was right there, you know. He was right there whenever everything was happening. And you're saying it's not a neat story. It Healing didn't happen overnight. It took time, but it didn't take away from the fact that God was there.
No, and I think life is not beautiful. Nobody I've ever met said, "Oh, it's been all sailing,"
Mm.
and there's nowhere in the Quran, in the Bible, nowhere God just promises us a straight road. He just
No,
says, "I will help make the crooked paths straight."
he
The
will.
wickedness, and that comes with suffering, that comes with tears, that comes with regrets, that comes with being abused, that comes with a lot of things. But He promises to be with us. I
He
think
promised.
what I take away from that.
He promised to make the crooked path straight. That's what he does. He promised that, and he's faithful
Faithful.
to make that happen. When I think about resilience, Layla, your for sure your faith, even when you were at school and what happened, and I'm angry because I think I just want to see those women now.
Yeah.
But you still had your faith, even in the form that you had it in at that time. It's still you believed that God was there, he would help you. You shared it with your friend, and you still held on.
Yeah. I think, like I said in the beginning, a lot of people have plan B. I only had plan God. That's it.
That was
I,
it.
I didn't know a rich relative. I didn't know there was nothing else for me. I couldn't even guarantee that later when people helped me to go to school, I didn't couldn't guarantee that those people are going to stay with me, because it was always rejection.
Yeah.
Uh, I had to come to that point where I understood who I was in my faith, what it
Mm.
meant to me, and faith is personal. I think a lot of people get hurt in churches or in groups of faith because they look at individuals. For
Mm.
me, my faith is very, very personal,
Hmm.
because I know that in a multitude, people will go away and I'll stay alone. Only
Yes.
my faith stays with me. Only my God stays with me.
Yeah.
I say to people that I'm not a religious person, I'm a Christian, and that just means I have a personal relationship with God the Most High. I will not tell you that I'm Baptist, I will not tell you that I'm Pentecostal, I will not tell you that I am Catholic, I will not tell you that I'm any of these. I am just a Christian. I have a personal relationship with God. There's no middleman for me.
No middleman.
And for me, that's where it comes.
You you met him.
Yes, and even when in good times or bad times in school, I knew that anything can be taken away from me. Any,
Hmm.
but my faith could not be taken away from me. And I think I compare it to having children. The first time I had a child, I'm sure anybody with children will testify. You look at this thing and you think, oh my goodness, this came out of me. This is mine. This is like nobody else. It's just, yeah,
Yeah.
quite.
Tell us some more about your journey of forgiveness. And forgiveness, I say to people, is not a destination, it's a journey. In my experience, in some areas, it's a journey. The journey can be hazardous sometimes. It's rugged. It's not straight. Talk us through your journey of forgiveness with forgiving abusers, forgiving your mom, and people who in your life that was harmful to you.
I think forgiveness, for me personally, I feel like most of the time is misunderstood. Think of forgiveness, you think you're going to go and forgive the other person. For me, it was different. I had to forgive myself because first, before I even went to my abusers, excuse me, because first of all, I had hurt myself by thinking I was not good enough. I had hurt myself by believing that what happened to me was my fault.
Right.
Excuse me. So I think, sorry, I'm getting a little bit emotional.
It's okay.
It's a journey that begins with self.
Yeah.
And then it transfers to the others. And I think that's important because for a long time I felt very ugly, physically, because of what happened to me, internally, emotionally, mentally. I just had these things that I used to think about myself. I dealt with those in my head. I was able to make a decision not to forgive, but to confront my abuser. And I think with faith, one thing I've learned about Jesus is that he will meet you where he wants to meet you. Because
For sure.
when you read in my book, I go back to my abuser, and I didn't go to forgive this man. I went to punch him in the face. I went to spit on him. I went to do whatever ugly thing you can ever think of. But by the time I went to him, I had forgiven myself. I was starting to feel good. I wanted him to know that that little girl became a woman.
Yeah.
And this woman understands that she was wronged by a grown-up man. So I went for that. And how faith plays in things, and this is oversaid, it's a cliche, God works in mysterious ways. I go to this man's home and I'm standing there and I have no words actually. Everything I had planned in my head is not working. And this little girl runs out of the house and she points at me, "Why are you mean to my daddy?" And I was like, "Oh, you know?" And I just looked at this little girl and I just thought, "Oh my goodness, you're so innocent. Actually, you don't deserve to see my anger. You don't deserve." And I remember holding her face and I said, "I just telling you, daddy, to keep you safe." And I turned around and that hurt so. I think that moment hurt more than the moment this man was abusing me. Literally. Literally. Oh my God. I walked away feeling like the failure. I just failed. And yet it was the most refining, redeeming moment in my life.
Whoa. Tell us more, Lela. Tell us more about what refined you through that moment.
Well, because I walked away and I remember being physically sick when I got to my friend's car. I was physically sick and my friend is really lovely. He held my cloth at the back and let me be sick. And I just cried. I was like, I wanted to punch him. I wanted to do this to me. And he just let me vent. And afterwards, he gave me water, drank water, sat in the car. And he said, "How do you feel?" And I'm like, actually, he knows. He knows that I know. He knows that, And I just felt slowly starting to think that this is a button that I passed on. He's gonna feel that what the anger I've been feeling, because he's gonna know, oh my goodness, that little child I was doing this to knew that it was a wrong. But also he's always going to look at his daughters. He had like 4 daughters, I think. Always.
Wow.
And he will remember my little face and my big face, and he would know that those children are going to grow. And that was a really redeeming moment. I was like, Jesus,
Wow.
And it did not take away anything because this man never said sorry. I never received any of that. But I know that Christ met me in that moment. I know that love was shown in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I became a new person because of that. Because I was scared of myself. I was like, oh, I didn't know I could forgive.
Mm.
I didn't say it, but I felt it.
You felt it. You felt the
I
forgiveness.
felt, yeah, I didn't say it. I
Wow.
didn't, oh, I forgive you. I'm here to do. No, I felt it. And I
Mm.
feel it right there and then. I felt it a few days later. I started
Mm.
playing to come back to the UK a different person. I was like, oh, because now I could envision this man, a grown up man. I could envision everything that I
Mm.
couldn't before.
Mm-hmm.
For
Mm-hmm.
me, defining moment. That was the redeeming moment. That was the moment that I think I longed for but didn't know.
Didn't know.
Yeah, and I know that not everybody can do that or is going to do that.
No.
But I think what I'll say to somebody is find your that one thing that triggers your inner strength.
Mm.
Yes.
Mm.
Mm.
I absolutely love it. I love, and that's why I said I love the ruggedness of this journey, because it's not a refined thing, and that's why it's so beautiful, because
Mm.
you said you freed yourself. You said forgiveness was freeing myself from not believing myself, thinking I was wrong, from all the things that we experience when we experience trauma and sexual trauma, all of those things that we feel about ourselves. Um,
Mm.
it was there, but she said forgiveness was freeing me from that. And also you freed the little girl who experienced the harm. You
Yeah.
said, I wanted him to know that big me know that what little me went through was wrong. That was so powerful.
Thank you.
That was, and the empathy that you had in that moment when we're not in our frontal lobe, we're not thinking and reasoning, but you see a little girl and immediately you connected with empathy. You think, I can't do this here. Here's this child that don't deserve to
Mm.
see this anger.
And I think that's what growing up does to us. I think you have to understand that for me, it's important for me not to pass on cycles.
Yeah.
And when I speak I speak a lot to young women who have gone through trauma, and I say you have to think about this: what the baton you're passing on to the next generation.
Mm-hmm.
Is it going to be of bitterness? And that doesn't mean just your own children, but your neighbors,
No.
another
Yeah.
child, innocent soul who was not part of this,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
situation. I think we have to think about, because our legacy is not just for us; it's for the generations to come.
Right.
And I love this, when we stand before God, He's going to ask, "What did you do?" Oh, I didn't forgive because that child deserved this.
Mm, 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 mm.
I think, yeah.
There's so many things happening there. That's taking responsibility, that is looking outside of ourselves, but it's also looking internally. There's so many things happening at the same time. You're looking internal at yourself. You're looking at what I have and what I've experienced and how it can impact people. And so it's not this narrow view. You've widened the view, and you're helping other people to be able to widen their view so
Yes.
that they too can pass something else on. And that is powerful. Where do you speak, Lela? Is it in churches, in schools? Where do you share your message?
Um, Churches, schools. Sometimes I sit with therapists like you, if their client has read my book and they've asked them
Mm, mm-hmm.
up for coffee. Because a lot of people, I think, I've had a lot of questions, something like, it has given me permission to revisit things, and I
Oh,
do.
wow.
I do sit in.
That's powerful.
Yeah, so, and I think that's what it is, because my story, as you read it, it's very ugly story. It's harrowing. It's not beautiful in any way. It's raggedy, but it's not unique to me. Uh,
Mm,
I think suffering is uniform. It might
it
happen in
is.
a different way,
Yeah,
but trauma
absolutely.
way of connecting souls. So I do speak in a lot of places, different countries. It's just been a privilege and a joy, because to me it's just a story, but to know that the story that is going to, it's not just for me, but changed another person's life, that really means a lot to me.
And it will change many lives. But you said it's not a pretty story, but I saw so much beauty in the story. Maybe I don't know, maybe I'm romantic, but I've seen so much beauty in the story. I see so much resilience, and that's the theme I want to touch on a little bit before we wrap up, Layla. The resilience that
Mm.
was clear from the beginning. The level of resilience that you had even before you met the Lord.
Mm.
You had that resilience because the fact that you lived where you lived when you found your mother, it was that your determination to find her, to not be in the position that you were in,
Mm.
and
I
you did it.
Yeah, no, I think you'll find that a lot of people who have been rejected or abandoned, they're always running to find something. I don't know
Yeah.
if you found that. They're always looking for something. And I think at a young age, I realized something was missing. Uh,
Hmm.
and it's so weirdly, it gave me hope. I
It
think,
did.
yeah, the resilience came from the rejection my auntie gave me.
Yeah.
She said something like, "Oh, she's a bastard," and that word, I didn't even understand what it means, but it didn't sit very well with me. And when you say it in Luganda, it even hurts in my language. It's like, oh, because those are things I thought they called children from, you know,
Hmm.
it's or
Hmm.
Dutch. And I was like, and I think that it fired something inside of me with questions to who am I? Why did I end up here? How did I end up here? And it's very common. I've found recently, even with grown-ups, when you've experienced rejection, you're either running away from those things, but if you're resilient, you're running to something. You're
Yeah.
hoping
Yeah.
there's something better. And I think for me, that is because I was hoping to find my mother, even if I didn't know. I wanted to know. I wanted to find
Yeah.
out. But also, I was running away from this horrible woman, a horrible man. I was just trying to. I think that's where, I guess, where I saw God's hand was always with me, because
Mm. Mm.
I can't see my 8-year-old right now here. She's 9 and little 10. I don't see them do that.
No.
Literally. But I think suffering has a way of awakening curiosity. And I'm a very um, ambitious person. I want to know things. And I think knowing that this woman wasn't my mother, I wasn't going to sit there and, especially with the things that were happening in the home, I wasn't
Mm.
going to sit there and wait for that.
Mm. Mm.
Go.
Hmm.
I had to go, but also going because she, because I didn't also, they didn't feed me very well. I'd learned from a very young age to actually fend for myself, and
Hmm.
but also I'd learned, you know, food was not an issue for me. Like if I didn't eat, it didn't bother me, and that continued until my adulthood. But I think resilience has to have fuel behind it, and
Yeah.
most of the times people are running away or they're running
Running
to.
towards.
Yeah.
I love that an example or of resilience or sorry rejection and abandonment. I've never known about the running towards something, but you're right. People are running towards something, and her statement fueled curiosity that make you want to find out, and this identity crisis, if you will, that the 6-year-old had, and she had to solve the problem. She had to solve that piece of the puzzle needed to be solved, and she did. Another place I see resilience and kindness was through your mom's friend, and I'm thinking, what an amazing woman she
Mm,
was, and how she helped, how she was always there,
mm.
and was there resilience and courage? How did you see resilience and courage in the wider community of not just your mom's friend, but other women, how they were living, being resilient?
I think in many, I would not speak from other cultures, but I think maybe it's uniform in Africa. Uganda, certainly, women seem to be more resilient.
Mm.
really um, take on roles that in the Western culture don't really sit very well. Is that thing of being independent, but without overshouting it. You
Uh-huh.
know, a kindness is not asked for. Kindness is given regardless.
Mm.
Sharing is just a common language.
Yes.
And I think that's because suffering, domestic abuse is shared between these women
Mm.
silently. They
Mm.
understand. I don't know if in my book you remember you read about our neighbor, this is who I found the old woman.
Mm-hmm.
She knew how to talk to me through kindness, but
Mm.
without taking me away, because she knew that,
Yeah. So
yeah,
amazing. So
yeah.
amazing.
And you
Yeah.
see that's I could tell now as an adult, I know that that woman probably has gone through things that taught her how to counsel, how to
Mm-hmm.
love
Mm-hmm.
distance, how to say it will be okay without
Mm-hmm.
saying. And I saw a lot of that on my journey.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the things that I think a lot of people, I haven't seen a lot in the West, because I think a lot of us lock ourselves away.
We do, don't we?
We do, but that community of,
Mm.
it was quite funny because when my daughter was ill, I didn't want to see anybody shut my door. And I had a friend, this one friend, she is amazing. She would just come, unlock the door, and just say, a cup of tea on the stairs. I'm just doing the hoovering. And I'm like, what is this woman doing? And she never talked to me. She would just do that and say, I'm going now. But that's this sort of kindness and resilience that she's African. And that this is the sort of familiarity. You need me. You don't know that you do, but I'm here anyway.
Yes.
Kind of the kind
Yeah.
of thing. But also resilience of being there for one another.
Mm-hmm.
Because my mom's friend, she was ill herself,
She was.
but she put herself second for her friend's children. And that's overwhelming if you understand it and think, oh my goodness,
Mm.
this is quite,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So I think there is a lot of resilience in the people who share
Yeah.
um, a common ground of suffering. You do understand people a little bit more when you've been through a certain sort of trauma. But
Yes, you
also,
do.
yeah, you do love differently. I think.
Yeah. You said kindness. Kindness is not asked for, it's given.
Mm.
And it's a language. And
Mm.
that is so powerful because I hear lots of people struggling, Layla, but they'll say, well, I can't share because other people are struggling too, and I don't want to give them my problems. Our society is so different. As you say, we lock away, we're individual, we're not sharing, we don't have community that we benefit from in the way that
Mm.
you've just described. That community where kindness is given, where somebody who has been through something can see that you're going through something and you don't have to say it. It's
The one thing,
seen.
if I didn't share this ugly story of mine, we wouldn't be talking.
We wouldn't. We wouldn't, would we? And my
And I
my
think that's,
friend, my friend read the book and she says, Joe, you have to read this book. You have to read it. And I got it. And I didn't finish it. She said, you have to read this book. When you finish, I have something to tell you. And then she said, I know Layla. And I got all excited. I said, you know her? It was just like, because it felt so much like a movie to me. And I want
yeah.
to encourage everybody to read the book, get Ashes of Childhood, and
There is
read it.
a new version.
There is.
Yeah. Because that one is the print is very small. I haven't even got it on. Oh, I have. Yeah. So this is.
Oh wow, that's beautiful cover.
Thank you. And I modeled that to my mother's face, actually.
Did you? And that's
Yeah.
such a powerful story, maybe for another podcast, because I do mother-daughter conversations, and I think your story with your mom, it's
Yeah.
that's probably a book on its own, I think. But I will. Where do we get that one?
Um, So on my website, I think you can walk into Waterstone and ask them for the IBSN number, which is, I don't
Yeah,
know.
okay. So I'll go on your website because it is it updated, Layla, because it looks like it's bigger than this. Is
It
it
is
more
a
information?
lot of complaints. People enjoyed reading that, but it had such tiny.
Words. Oh, okay, okay, okay.
So this got better.
All right, I see. Okay, the font is
Yeah.
bigger. The
It's
words are
exactly
bigger.
stories, just a bit bigger, prettier. Yeah.
Different experience. Different
Yes.
experience in that reading through that one. But thank you so much for coming and sharing with us, Layla. I want to encourage you again. If you're struggling and challenged, if you have experienced adversity, and I mean the podcast is called The Stories That Shape Us. That's what we talk about here. That's what we do at Wounds to Scars. If your story is a challenging story and you are struggling with your faith, you're struggling with resilience, you're struggling with forgiveness, you're struggling with healing and the self-blame and the self-doubt and the way that is playing out in your life, you'd want to read Layla's book to see how she navigate those themes as well and how she's overcome. And here telling us, forgiveness is a journey, faith is a journey, and how her faith has kept her and how she's using her story to bless others. And our conversations, Layla, I enjoy them, and I'm looking forward to I'll go on your website and see what else is happening. Where can people find you? Are you on social media? Can people follow you somewhere?
Yes, I'm on Instagram as Lela Burbridge, and I am on Facebook. I believe we have an organization called the Lela Initiative. So all the money that comes from my books and the people I publish go towards supporting literacy projects in Uganda. I feel like that was my calling. But also, I'm very interested in publishing stories like mine. I'm interested in encouraging anybody who is facing any suffering and wants to understand how to understand their emotions through the written word. That's more interested in that, because my story did not start out as a book. I actually just wrote it as therapy,
Yeah.
just to understand what happened to me. And it's so different when something bad is happening and you put it on paper. It just
Mm.
looks quite different.
Yeah.
Words,
For sure.
suddenly the words you can't say to others are staring at you. It's just, there's a powerful thing in there. But yeah, so I'm on social media, and obviously they can come to you through you as well. So
For
anybody.
sure. For sure. Tell us about the literacy program before we go, Layla. Why did you start that program and why are you supporting that?
So I started a company called the Lela Initiative because I found when I went to church, where I went in Uganda, where the Sunday school used to be, I really enjoyed stories being read to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always wanted to do something back home, but I didn't want to sponsor children because there's so much need of that I would be overwhelmed. I
Yeah.
wanted to do that. I wanted to start something that God could use beyond me as well. And I feel like the written word is that thing. So basically, we plant mobile libraries within the slums or poor communities, work
Mm-hmm.
with churches in those communities to get books to read to children who would never go to school. We plant reading hubs in rural communities to help women and girls, even other children, to come and talk, to have a space where they can talk. Because
Mm-hmm.
for me, having that security of, if it's too much, you can find somebody, which I didn't have as a child, is very, very important. So
Yes.
this
That's
yeah,
powerful. Giving them a place to come and talk and to
yes,
hear and to read stories and to put it in places where they wouldn't have had access.
absolutely. And I think sometimes when you put something else, oh, this is a counseling area, people will not come to it, but for us we call it a community reading hub. Somebody will come in for a book, but then see something else or talk to someone and say, oh, so we want to use books, the umbrella of hope, really, I think.
Books to be the umbrella of hope. I love that. So every time you buy Lela Ashes of My Childhood, you'll be helping to inspire hope into somebody who would not have had hope. Thank you so much for watching this episode of the Stories That Shape Us podcast. Thank you, Lela, for coming and talking with us on the Stories That Shape Us podcast. I hope you'll join us on the next story.
Thank you for having me. It's been